Geocachomaniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
Welcome back for episode 261 of the GeoGearHeads, the show that every week talks about geocaching and tech stuff for, us location-based gamers. Now, Chris, we've got a show today that's going to be kind of exciting because this is like the premier app for iOS users these days. And there's a new version of it out. But before we get into that, we have a lot of feedback to talk about. But why don't you introduce Nick while we're doing our introductions here?
Well, Daryl, it is a pleasure to have Nick Hubbard from Cachly to talk about the new version of his app. Nick, thank you for joining us this evening.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Now, last week, we did a randomized show. And, I have to say, that's one of my favorite types of shows. We cover so many different topics. And we got a lot of email about our password manager segment. So, first one came from Ed. He said, great randomized episode last week, but I think you may have undersold KeePass a bit. I'm an avid user, and it has some great features. First off, it's free. It's open source software. Secondly, it supports extensions to enable connectivity to third-party stuff, very programmer-centric. Third, it's portable, and the mini KeePass app for iOS platform is great to take with you. So there you go. I used to use KeePass. It was nice because it kept a copy of the database locally, which was great. We put it on a network drive, shared passwords, amongst a department. It worked really well. Like I say, we've moved to LastPass, but I'm a proponent of KeePass as well.
Yeah, I like the idea of open source on that, and the mobile platform or mobile offline databases are just really important. And that's actually what the next email was about.
Yes. So more email. This one's from Wild Cachers. He says in episode 260, that's the randomize Lii 52. If you're not familiar with the Roman numerals, as you know, we have become so familiar with Roman numerals these days. That puts us just one randomized show beyond the number of Super Bowls there's been, Daryl. I know that's something you track.
Oh, I track that so closely.
Yeah.
I was thinking more, that we have a randomized show for every week of the year now.
Oh, yeah. There you go. Wow. That's pretty random. Wild Cachers goes on to say, one of you expressed concerns about being able to get information out of your LastPass vault without an internet connection. While LastPass does use a cloud-based vault, it can also save an encrypted copy of the vault on each device. These copies will represent the vault contents as of the last successful online login, which is usually sufficient to get anything. But the most recent changes are out even while offline. So he puts a pass. He puts a link on there to LastPass help desk for any questions you may have. They go on to say there are a bit difference if you have enabled two-factor authentication, but you can still get offline access in two ways. One is to use a setting that implicitly enables offline access with two-factor, although it has a side effect I don't like. And he goes on to put a link to that side effect. And I don't know exactly what it is. I didn't follow the link. He says, but because of that potential gap in security, I don't enable offline access using that setting. Instead, I treat my iPhone as a trusted device for LastPass. It holds my authenticator app anyway, so I'm already placing trust in it, and do not require two-factor on that device. I can still log into my account or to my vault on my phone, even without an internet connection or two-factor authentication. I've been using LastPass for about 6 years, and I absolutely could not live without it. Thanks for spreading the word about this great application. So there you go. Now, I was unaware that you could set individual devices as trusted.
Yeah, no, I knew that you could do that part, but he does touch on something here that I think all of us who've been using password managers for any length of time agree with, is you can't live without it once you get using it.
Definitely. I mean, there are passwords I literally do not know because I let them create it. And, it's as long as a freight train with random characters, and there's no way I'm going to take the effort to memorize it.
Oh, absolutely. And what really sucks is when you get that password that you have to punch in on like the Fire TV or your Roku or whatever. And then you're sitting there, why did I let it create a password like this?
Exactly.
Or even your mobile device. It's a huge pain.
Well, the mobile device, usually I can do the copy and paste if everything else fails. But I have had a few where they've disabled the paste, and that really annoys me.
Well, even in some browsers, they've disabled paste for passwords, and that's annoying.
That's exactly what I'm talking about, is you'll get these web pages that they've disabled paste, and it's, guys, don't you understand password managers?
Like, okay, fine. You know what? My password for here is password. Move on. Okay, no, it's not like that.
No, not quite, but you keep wanting to do something like that. So Mike D emailed, I have a Garmin 3, 5, Quest, various Nuvi, 60, 62, 64, and now a 70 or 750T, and none of them have a GPS mode off. The nearest is demo mode. Guess that saves a bit of power. I never found them to go into that mode without a prompt, but they all quite often hang if it loses signal and I cannot get it to reacquire. You don't get a prompt and the unit just hangs. And this is a problem that I've run into a couple of times, which is why I just power cycled. Okay, so going back to the email, this sometimes happens on startup if it takes a time to acquire the sats, especially if you move the units immediately. They seem to give up looking after a while and will not restart unless you power down and power up again. Some more feedback on that topic from last episode.
I do remember let's see. I'm going to have to go back. Legend would go into demo mode if it didn't find satellites, say, within 30 minutes.
Well, it is my recollection with the, I think it was a Legend. I'm trying to remember now, but no, it was a Vista. I had the eTrex Vista, not the Legend. It would prompt, do you want to keep trying or go into demo mode?
Yeah. So anyway, but yes, I've had them where they just hang. It's like, I'm trying to get connection. Now I don't know what to do. And they fall into some little gap in the software.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and when you haven't turned on your GPSR for weeks on end,
and especially if you turn it on, say, in a different city.
Yeah. It does take a long time for it to acquire and,
to download that
almanac.
Oh, thank you. I couldn't, I was thinking catalyst. I couldn't remember the word. That almanac.
Do any of them have like a GPS assist, kind of like cell phones have now? So they'll, check the cell phone towers close, and then they'll kind of give a reading to quickly find location, and the satellites can kind of update.
There were some options on using TV and FM transmitters, but I don't know how much of that is actually being used. They can't use the cell towers really, though, because the cell towers are for communicating with the cell phones. And
they need another radio in there.
Right. But like the 60 CSX and that whole line had the Surf 3 chipset, and that was its big advantage. It would locate transmitters in the area that it knew where they were located and say, hey, I must be around here. Help me lock in quicker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it also allowed it to keep active for longer.
Daryl, I've been to some of the big outdoor stores lately. Been looking for a good pair of hiking boots. And of course, I have to walk through the GPS section.
Of course.
I was shocked to still see the Garmin Montera for sale.
Oh, yeah. Well, they only updated that about a year and a half ago.
I didn't even know they updated. I thought that it came out with it, decided, nope, this isn't the way we're going to go, and dropped it.
No, they do have, I think it's got the capacitive touchscreen now.
Okay.
That was about the only thing they really updated. So I don't think it was really a full out update. I think it was more of a we're going to get rid of all these old touch screens, and, resistive touch screens, and switch to capacitive because that's what we can get, and it's cheaper.
Resistive is futile.
Yes, but I like it because it works with gloves.
Well, that's a point.
Sure.
And mittens, even.
Yeah, just you have no dexterity.
Okay, well, there we go. I think we're caught up. We're done with all the randomized topic. Let's become very focused instead of random.
Yeah, we'll focus this week on Cachly 2.0, which I'm sure all of our listeners know is the great caching app for iOS. Probably undisputed now as the premier one, since so many of the others have kind of slid behind, and the Groundspeak one has really been lacking. Is that a good enough way to put it?
I think so.
Okay. So why don't you tell us about what has changed in the new Cachly 2.0?
Yeah, absolutely. So this was something I worked on for, I think, about 4 or 5 months. And I didn't put out any smaller updates during that time. But I was working really hard on a number of features, but one of the biggest features was our offline vector maps. So previously, all of the offline maps were tile-based. And so if you wanted to download maps, you had to download hundreds or thousands of tiles for different zoom levels. And then, you'd be holding multiple gigabytes of image files basically on your phone. So that wasn't fun when you wanted to download a whole state or something like that. And now with vector maps, we can download a full state. Like Washington State is about 68 megabytes for the whole thing. And so now it's just data that is then rendered out on your phone kind of at real time instead of actually having image files. So that's a great enhancement for our users. You can download full countries, states. We have the whole world on there. So that's pretty exciting. And then we have things like souvenirs that people are asking for. Before, you couldn't browse those, your own or other users, and now you can. We have updated user profiles where you can just see the user's picture in a more graphical way. You can see their finds, their hides, the photos they've put on logs. You can see their souvenirs. You can see all the kinds of finds they've had, the kinds of hides they've had. So it's really kind of like gives a social media profile feel to other user profiles, which is kind of fun. And then we did some design updates to like the map callout, the list view, and also the detail screen of caches, and added a bunch of new info like what the little pop-up on the map when you tapped a little pin wouldn't show how many favorites there were or how many trackables there might be. It also didn't show the cache code. So just simple things like that were missing. There was also some information in the list view that was missing that we added. So small things like that the users were requesting. We didn't want to just slap them on there. So our designer redesigned a couple of those screens, and then we built those. And then we have things like a bunch more offline list tools like merging, copying, renaming, reordering them. If you have an offline list with images that you have downloaded, you can delete all those to free up some space on your device. You can re-download all those images from an offline list if you want to at a certain time. So we're just really trying to give the user a lot more flexibility with what they do with their offline stuff and their online stuff. So we actually separated the navigation on the bottom now with 2 tabs, where there's one that's online and then one that's offline. So it's just a little more clear than we had before. I think all of the offline stuff used to be in the More tab, and it was kind of confusing because there was offline lists, and then there was pocket queries, and there was imports, and there was kind of 3 sections of things that all were offline, and now we've kind of consolidated all those into the offlines tab. So yeah, and then a bunch of other small features like highlighting caches. You can import GPX files that have a highlight, in the actual XML. If it has a highlight tag, it'll actually be highlighted in Cachly when you import it. Small things like delete all pending logs for users that would log it on or save the pending logs on Cachly, and then they wanted to upload them in a different way. They had to manually go through and delete every pending log, and now they can just do it with one quick action. So bunch of simple things like that. And the list of bug features was huge. So really it was, 4 months of work that we released. I was really happy with the feedback from everybody. So yeah, it's a big update.
Well, in general, everything is same look and feel as what people are used to. So it's not a learning curve to jump in and use it if you were a Cachly user before.
Yeah, correct.
One of the first things I noticed on the new version of Cachly was going into a cache listing, looking at the description, and now there's a source option. So you can see text, web, and source, which is fantastic.
Yeah, because I mean, there's a couple of I think puzzle caches or mysteries where you have to look in the source code of the web page to get a little hint. So I actually had never realized that, and then it was when one of my users said, "Hey, can we do this?" And so that's another example again of where a user suggested something, and then it was easy to just put it back into the app.
Love it. Cachly is my go-to app. Especially now that it does souvenirs. And what's funny is souvenirs. Let's go back to the geocaching app several years ago when it first came out on Android. The souvenir would be like a quarter screen size, and you look at it on the iPhone and it's full screen. And now on Cachly, it's about a quarter screen again. It's actual resolution. They're not you don't blow it up like the geocaching app did. So.
Well, some people wanted me to. I actually had it for a while. I think it was in the beta version, but it was zooming too far. So it was kind of like 110%. And for some reason, it was a really difficult thing to make it 100%. Sounds strange, but the code for zooming images and stuff like that in iOS is it's difficult sometimes. So I ended up just making it 100% of what the actual resolution was. And people can zoom in on it if they want to. So.
Exactly.
Well, I want to say that the souvenirs were originally designed for the iPhone 3, 3G, 4 screen size. So they were that actual screen size, which means now that we have taller screens, they're not going to scale well, period.
And they're also 1x resolution, I'm sure.
Exactly.
So
they were not Retina.
Since most phones are high res now, that's why they're also really small.
Right.
Exactly.
And you mentioned the maps, and that's going to be a big feature that most of our users are really going to like, especially when they're going offline. And when you were on last, you had mentioned you were looking at different options of tile servers and things like that. What did you end up going with for serving out those tiles?
So we have our own servers for this kind of stuff. I built some different servers for actually generating the maps. And so those use OpenStreetMaps, and so we take the planet file and then basically split it into all of our different map pieces that we're going to use, countries and states and stuff like that, and then process that, zip it up, and then we send it to Amazon's file hosting server. So that's where they're actually hosted at. And so we have nice package zip files that Cachly downloads and then processes, and that's where all the data is coming from. So. Yeah, it's a lot of working pieces in the back end. That's what took so long, was to build all that infrastructure, but now it's working well. So,
well, we have those nice OpenStreetMaps that so many of us are used to.
Yep.
But what about for satellite views? That's still not available offline.
No, so we used to use MapQuest tiles for satellite, and then they stopped that service, and that was before we were ready with our offline maps. So we actually had to pay for OpenStreetMap tiles for a while. We had to drop satellite view because there was really no providers that had satellite tiles unless they were just ridiculously expensive. But then there's a place in Germany called GeoFabric. I don't know if you guys heard about that. That does all OpenStreetMap stuff, and they are a tile provider. So we actually paid for OpenStreetMap tiles for a while between when MapQuest stopped their service and then when we released 2.0. I think it was about 2 weeks after 2.0. I finally said we're gonna shut down the tile service. So anybody that's still on 1.7.1, make sure you upgrade, because offline map downloading won't work anymore. So.
Well, we should mention that this is a free upgrade to existing users.
Yes.
There's no upgrade fees, so definitely go and upgrade it. And I don't think the specs even changed on what you need to run it. Am I correct?
Yeah, so the minimum is still iOS 8. That didn't change. We do have code in there that, checks to see for, iOS 9 or iOS 10 only features, but there's ways to do that in the code. And if you don't have that version of the iOS, it's not going to actually do that feature. So.
Right. So, but it is a, if you ran it before, you can still run it.
Yep, absolutely.
But in the actual maps view, you still have the satellite views, and I haven't really looked to see what those are. What are the satellite options that you're downloading live?
So we have all of Apple Maps, and then we also have the Apple Flyover option, which I was actually talking with Gary Slinkard today about, where you can do 3D view and stuff like that of cities and mountains and stuff like that. So that's kind of fun that people don't probably realize. And those are the flyover options. Then we have Google Maps. We have Thunder Forest. We have a bunch of other ones. We have quite a few, and I probably don't even remember them all. We have OpenStreetMap tiles and a bunch of those. But unfortunately, things like Google's satellite map tiles, they don't let you download those. So they're only available to view live.
Right, and of course, I'm a big fan of using the hybrid Google Maps, where it's their maps with the satellite view.
Yeah, yep, those are nice.
So I almost always cache online just because I love using those maps.
Yeah, yeah, I don't use offline that much either.
No, but it's a nice option when you are going into an area that doesn't have cell reception.
Yeah,
to be able to download a state ahead of time. You're traveling to somewhere across the border, let's say Canada or Mexico. Being able to download those maps ahead of time and have that with you rather than pay for expensive international data is a great option.
Yep. Like one of my users is he goes caching in Germany every year, so he just downloaded the whole country of Germany, and then I think he was there for 2 months and he was actually a beta tester, so he's been using it for a while. But yeah, all offline the whole time.
Wow. I mean, getting the cache data, you can do that from hotel Wi-Fi quite easily. But,
yeah, because that's small.
Exactly. Now, you still have translate as an option, correct?
Yes.
To be able to translate, say, let's take this German cacher as a perfect example. They download the cache data, it's in German. What do you do?
Well, if you're offline, you don't have too many options.
That's true.
There was some integration that we have with the app called iTranslate.
Mm-hmm.
And that works online, so you can use Google Translate, or we have integration with iTranslate. And they have an offline feature where you can download a whole dictionary of offline stuff. But they have a bug where it doesn't allow us to basically do the translation offline from our app. And I've contacted them, but it hasn't gone anywhere. So I wish that was possible to do that integration, because to actually, hold translations inside of Cachly is just not something that we want to do. It's just too big. And,
sure.
And so using that integration with Google or iTranslate is really nice.
And that is a very cool feature.
Yes. Now, is it for all spoken languages? I mean, does it do Klingon or, other silly ones that we may, like runes that keep coming up in caches around here?
Well, whatever language Google and iTranslate support, it'll definitely translate. So.
Okay. You also work with lists, and lists have changed so much from geocaching.com. How does that work within Cachly?
So on the geocaching.com app, they treat it similar to how we do it. So you can create lists from like Pocket Queries, or you can just load some live caches and then create a list from that. So essentially we do the same thing. And then all of those are saved locally. You can also, view your bookmarks and stuff like that. The geocaching app, the official one, has the advantage of actually syncing all those lists back to the server. So I'm pretty sure if you have 2 devices, those are synced. We don't yet have that capability of syncing the offline lists. Okay. So those are actually local in the local database. So, but you can always, have a Pocket Query and then be importing that, and then, continue to update all the caches or something like that. So there's ways to do it, but we're not actually syncing all your offline lists, to the cloud or something.
Okay. And one of the things that you've always done and I see is also in 2.0 is routing to a cache using other applications on your phone. What all options do we have there? I mean, I think you've added some in 2.0, haven't you?
I almost need to open up the code here to see.
It's impressive.
There's a lot, and they only show up if you actually have it installed.
Okay.
So,
well, one of them I know is Waze.
Yes, Waze is a very popular one.
Yeah, it's a very popular one. It's nice, especially, you know, we just did a trip up to family for Christmas. You know, Waze was invaluable for traffic, but it was also good to, you know, route nearby for caches. So,
yeah. Okay, so I got the list here. So we got Navigon, we got Here Maps, we have TomTom, we got Waze. There's one called GPS Navigation Scout, Maps.me, Gaia GPS, Pocket Earth, Sigit, and that's all there is. So it's quite a few.
It is.
And there's other mapping apps out there, but not all of them provide a way to kind of hook into their software. So with all of these, we're able to send the coordinates, you know, your current location, and then where you want to go, and then it will basically load it up into their app. You know, some other, I think it was TomTom or something like that, has a new app that's easier to use, but they just don't have a way to add that hook. So I've had requests for different apps, but some of them just aren't possible.
Well,
Sure.
Some of them only want to handle addresses, not coordinates.
Yeah, that's true.
Which would make it exceedingly difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, you could reverse geocode that to get an address from coordinates, but then that would be another, you know, network request, and it might take a second. But.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be terribly accurate either, because you know you have something in the middle of the
forest or something.
Yeah, you're not going to get to the right spot.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take a little flyer here, and what did you not get to add that you maybe wanted to add for this version?
So one of the things that I had told people I was going to add in 2.0, but it didn't happen, was kind of the bulk uploading of pending logs. So, and I realized as I was getting close to be finished with 2.0 that it was a bigger feature than I had really expected. I think I was telling you guys before the show started that, so you could have 20 logs that you want to upload, but each of those logs might have 5 images that you want to upload. Some of them might have trackables. And one user I talked to wanted to visit about 70 trackables for every cache he logged. So if you have those kind of numbers, you're having to make one network request to geocaching.com for every piece of that. So it gets quite large. You know, some users would never, you know, even upload images or do trackables, so you're fine there. But we got to make it flexible for all users. So it's taking more time to account for all that.
Wow, 70 trackables per log.
Yeah. I was surprised.
Yeah, that's a big feature I want.
I don't know if he has a backpack with them all or what.
My guess is he's not carrying them all. Maybe on a sheet of paper.
Yeah.
But Shermanator18 is a big proponent of that one, and I do too. I was bugging you about that before the show. But is that the only thing that didn't end up making it in from the 2.0 list?
Pretty much, yeah. There was some of my major features that I really wanted that I had set out and told people I was going to do. And then along the way, there was a lot of suggestions, and some of those were really excellent. So it actually took longer than I expected to get 2.0 out. And so there was a lot of great suggestions that I hadn't even thought about. So along with those and my, you know, couple of big features, I was pretty happy with, you know, what got finished.
Well, I can definitely say it's worth the wait.
Good, thank you.
And Ed in the chat room has said that he might have to get an iPhone to get Cachly. And we've talked about that extensively. You've talked it on other shows recently too, that there is not going to be an Android version because you just can't port stuff like this easily. But you had also mentioned possibility of an Apple Watch app last time we were on. And at that point, it wasn't really on the radar. Is that something that you might be looking at in the future?
Well, when the Series 2 watch came out, I bought one. So I had the original one, and then I have the Series 2 that has GPS on it, with the intention of, you know, working on that. But that was kind of around the time that 2.0 was being finished. So I still have not worked on that feature. And I'm really excited that the watch has GPS by itself now. But the one thing that I really wanted was for there to be a compass in the watch, but there still isn't. So, I mean, it would be so cool to have a compass on your wrist that you wouldn't have to, have anything to do with your phone, and your phone could be in your backpack or whatever. But yeah, it's just not possible. So I don't know. I still kind of feel like it's a novelty, but I still have plans to work on it.
Yeah, and it used to be in the intro app, but that eventually got stripped out. The thing that I really liked using that for was just basically the information and the hints when you were looking for the cache, so that I didn't have to go digging into my pockets, didn't have to stop periscoping, whatever, because that worked in the background.
Yeah.
So that's a nice feature, but until we get better functionality in the watch, I'm not sure it's going to be useful for more than just, the few of us who like to do periscope.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Is there anything else on the short list of features that we haven't talked about that you might be able to share?
Well, let's see here. Let me look at my list. There's a lot of small things. There was people requested small things like, can you make a map scale show up on the map? So I can see what what a distance is from 2 points, and when you zoom in, it changes. And for a while, I was thinking, developing something like that is actually really difficult. And then luckily, I think it was in iOS 9, Apple actually added that as a native thing to maps. And so that was something to quickly enable, and users could test it out. So small things like that were really, easy to solve once Apple actually added those. Because developing that on my own would probably take, weeks for something simple like that, to account for imperial and metric system and stuff like that. So small things like that. Other features, like I mentioned, like highlighting caches. Some users that came from Geosphere app, I've been getting quite a few of them recently, and so they've been giving me some good input on how they use that app and how they think caching could be improved, not to be a copy of Geosphere, but to just kind of take some of the cues from that app. So a lot of those things like highlighting, and then be able to create a list from the highlights that you made on the live map, export the highlighted caches. So just a lot of different options like that we worked on, and so those are some good features.
Well, and one of the features that I've mentioned in our previous conversations was about the templates. And you do have some cool keyword replacement options right now, but it's just the one template. Has that made it to the list yet for multiple templates?
Not yet. More people have been asking about that, because they're saying, I would do a different log with a found than a DNF, which is, obvious. And it shouldn't be a super hard thing to build, but it would just take some time. So there was a lot of priorities that went above, that feature, and I just haven't had time to build that one yet. But it's definitely still on my list.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of the apps that did have, your default log for each type of log type. So, you'd have a thanks for the great event for your attended logs. You'd have the, search for a while but couldn't find it for your DNFs.
Yep.
But I really liked having the multiple types, the multiple like stamps almost, so I could go and take a default. So when I'm out with these people, grab it and drop in this chunk of text.
Yeah, my plan is to make it where you can actually just create a new one. You can name it whatever you want, insert your text and your keywords. And so you could just basically do an unlimited number of, custom ones. So that's the plan. We'll see when it happens.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to that. That's probably the last big feature that I'm really struggling with that Geosphere has.
Yeah, we need to start doing some crowdsourced funded features.
There you go.
Actually, on our forums now we have a feature request section, and I actually changed it so people can do votes, and so we can actually kind of see the popularity of certain features that people request. So it's kind of a good thing.
Yeah, that's excellent. I don't think I've actually been to the forums ever.
Yeah, go check it out.
Definitely. Shermanator 18 was mentioning highlighted caches. She was a beta tester and didn't even realize that one was in there apparently.
And if you have a iPhone 7 or any of the phones with Force Touch, when you're looking at list view, you can force touch on an item in list view, and that'll give you a highlight option. So it's a couple of small things in there that people probably don't realize.
Yeah. How does that work for people without the force touch?
You can't do that, but you go into a cache details and then you tap the ... button and there's a highlight option.
Okay.
So one more screen in.
And then Shermanator 18 asked about, is it possible to be able to have more than one user signed into the app or easily switch between users?
Not multi-users right now, and I don't really have plans to do that because it's difficult to do that. So yeah, you can log out and log back in quickly. That's not a problem. You know, just go to settings and then log out, and you can log back in as a different user. Multiple users, I'm not sure about that yet. I have it on the list, but it's pretty low priority.
Well, and one of the things you added with this version was the ability to export those pending logs as GSAC nodes.
Yep.
So I forgot to ask you about that. Is that something that can actually be directly uploaded to geocaching.com as field notes, or is that the GPX file?
It's the TXT file. So yeah, you can upload it to geocaching.com as well.
So yeah, that will help for a lot of the people who need to do more than one, is at least you can take that TXT file, export it, and then everyone can take that and log on their account through the website.
Yep, and I had a bunch of users testing that for GSAC and also for the website. So they were helping me, refine that and stuff. So because I'm a Mac user, so I have to load up VMware Fusion every time I load up GSAC to do testing. So it's not my go-to app.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm well familiar with that. Well, is there anything else that you want to share that we haven't touched on?
Well, I'm definitely not finishing 2.0 and then just kind of taking a break for a while. So I have more ideas in mind. I'm working on updates for 2.1, and I'm wanting to work on performance of offline maps for older devices, because if you have something like an iPhone 5 and you're at a high zoom level, the offline maps do render pretty slowly. Just your processor is pretty slow. But I think there's ways to fix that. So I'm going to work on performance of offline maps and also offline lists. Currently are kind of slow if you have thousands and thousands of caches, as well as importing GPX files with thousands of caches. So again, those users that come from Geosphere are used to doing things like importing 40,000 caches from a GPX file, which in the beginning when I created Cachely, I never even considered that as an option. So I didn't build it in a way that could accommodate that. So if you try that right now, it'll crash. So those are some of the performance things I'm going to be working on that are, not necessarily things that are as big visual features, like our offline maps were in 2.0, but I think in 2.1 it's going to be faster and better, for everybody. So that's kind of what I'm working on, more kind of internal fixes like that.
And being able to log all 40,000 of my trackables per cache.
Exactly.
Okay.
That one is planned for 2.1. Yes. Probably take you about 50 minutes to do it.
And use up all my mobile data for the month.
Yes, exactly.
But I got to do it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on and sharing a little bit about the new version of Cachely, and we're definitely looking forward to the next updates.
Absolutely.
Just in case, the new version. Just in case people don't know where to find it, it is in the App Store and at Cachely, CACH.ly, or you can actually go to Cachely.com.
Yep.
I don't know if I've ever actually been to Cachely.com. I go to CACH.ly all the time. It's so convenient.
That one's harder to tell people. We're like chc.ly, and it's a little confusing. So
yeah.
We have the
seemed
other
like a good idea at the time, but didn't end up working so well.
Well, I still like it, but I think for things like this, when you're telling people audibly, it's a little easier to say .com. So
yeah, and everyone just kind of assumes the .com.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we've got a bunch of great shows coming up. Next week, we have our live streaming 2 show with geocaching vlogger and Memphis Mafia. The week after that, for episode 263, we're talking cache loads with Ben of geocaching.com. We'll get a little bit more about those lists and pocket queries and all that kind of stuff. Then on the 19th, we're going to be talking about geocaching in education with Doc Firewoman. Then on the 26th, we're going to have Sherman 18 on for Randomized Lee. That's going to be 53.
The eyes just keep getting longer. Lee. Pretty soon we'll do Randomized Las Vegas. Maybe we can do it live. No? But until then, make sure to check the Cacheamaniacs website at cacheamaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes from this and all of our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by emailing GeoGearHeads at cacheamaniacs.com or through the many channels of social media. Your support helps keep the Cacheamaniac shows coming. Please consider becoming a patron through the link on our website to support the Cacheamaniac shows. GeoGearHeads is produced by Chris Umfenauer and Daryl Wattenberg. This show's copyright for the last time, 2016, by Daryl Wattenberg. All rights reserved.
Cash with a Cacheamaniac.